Bergen. Aloha. Good to see you, Patty. Thanks for coming from Waimea.
Hello. Okay. Let's get started. Aloha. Thank you all for coming. My name is Samuel Wilder King II. I'm the Executive Director of Imua TMT. We are a Native Hawaiian-led community group advocating in favor of building the 30-meter telescope on Manuakea. We're here today to discuss how Maunakea and TMT unite culture and science. There's a lot of discussion about, are these two things in conflict? Are they symmetries? And we think that there's a real vision for Hawaii where those things are combined. And we're going to be joined today by our panel of speakers. And without further ado, I will introduce all of them. Sitting to my left, right here, is Kalepa Baybayan. Kalepa is, oh, hold on. Kalepa was born and raised in Lahaina and has been an active participant in the Polynesian voyaging renaissance since 1975. Kalepa has served as a captain and navigator on board the iconic Hawaiian double-hulled canoe, voyaging canoe Hokulea, as well as canoes Hawaii Iloa and Hokua Alakai. In 2007, he was one of 5 Hawaiian men initiated into the Order of Po, a 3,000-year-old society of deep-sea navigators, by their teacher, Master Navigator Mauliola. On the island of Satawal, Kalepa has served as Imiloa's first navigator in residence since his appointment in 2009. Kalepa most recently participated in the 3-year Malama Honua worldwide voyage. He returned to school late in life, graduating with a BA from Kahakaula o Ke'elikolani College of Hawaiian Language in 1997, and followed with a master's in education from Heritage College. Please join me in welcoming Kalepa Baybayan. Thank you, Anane. I'll just, oh, here, wait, right here. Oh, next up, we'll have Heather Kaluna. Dr. Oh, sorry, Wally. All right. I'm skipping around because I don't have it written down in order, which is what happens when you got me doing all of these things. So, Wally Ishibashi is born and raised in Keaka. To the left of Kalepa is Wally Ishibashi. I think everybody in this room actually knows who Wally Ishibashi is, so he might not even need an introduction. For the online audience, and I should note this before I introduce Wally, we are filming everything today and we will be putting it online, as one of our primary motivations is spreading dialogue and facts about TMT and Maunakea. So we will be sharing this online, and everything we say will be posted, so please be aware. Wallace A. Ishibashi Jr. was born and raised in Keaka on Hawaiian homelands. He retired from HCPC and Maunakea Sugar, retired from International Laborers and Warehousing Union? Longshoremen and Warehouse Union. Local 142 Division. He's currently a senior advisor to the Office of Maunakea Management. The Office of Maunakea Management is an entity under the University of Hawaii that oversees all of the telescope leases and maintains the Ranger program and makes sure Maunakea stays clean. He is also a past Hawaiian Homes Commissioner. Please join me in welcoming Wally Ishibashi. Next to Wally's left, we have Heather Kaluna. Professor Dr. Heather Kaluna is an assistant professor of astronomy. She is an alumni of the Physics and Astronomy program at Hilo, where she obtained a BA in Mathematics and Physics in 2008. In 2015, she obtained her PhD in Astronomy at Manoa from the Institute for Astronomy. Prior to returning to Hilo as a faculty member, she spent 2 years as a postdoctoral fellow at the Hawaii Institute of Geophysics and Planetology at Manoa. Dr. Kaluna was born and raised in Po'oa on the island of Hawaii and has a strong connection to water fire that carries into her scientific interests. Her research combines observational astronomy with laboratory experiments to characterize water-related spectral features on various solar system bodies. For example, moons, asteroids, and comets. That sounds awesome. The goal of these observations and experiments are to understand how these spectral features vary in response to the harsh environment of space. In addition to teaching, Dr. Kaluna is developing a visible and near-infrared wavelength spectral laboratory at Hilo. The lab will be used to characterize the spectral features of various minerals found in meteorites and to provide a basis for interpreting spectral data of asteroids and other solar system bodies. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Heather Kaluna. I think most people in this room also know Richard Ha, and Richard Ha is briefly a local farmer and businessman who has taken a very strong interest in TMT and this issue, as he understands that it's very valuable and important to the state of Hawaii, and he's been active in this debate and discussion for many, many years. And please, Richard, and all the speakers, please add on if I've missed anything about yourselves. Please join me in welcoming Richard Ha. And last but not least, James Mauliola Keaka Stone Jr. Mr. Stone is a Hawaii attorney with 30 years of experience whose practice focuses upon the representation of real estate companies, trade associations, and risk management. He has written 15 certified real estate continuing education courses, over 40 real estate-related training modules, and well over 100 real estate-related articles covering a wide range of topics. Regarding Hawaiian culture, Mr. Stone is an accomplished musician and hula practitioner who was trained by Winona Beamer and Henry Mo'Keha Pa. Mr. Stone has recorded 5 CDs and has been nominated for 3 Nahoku Hanohano Awards. In 2008, he won the Hoku for Album of the Year for Nalani Eha as co-producer and recording artist. Additionally, he was president of the Hawaiian Music Hall of Fame from 2004 to 2016. Please join me in welcoming Kimo Stone. And you're stuck holding the last one, so please, I'll give it myself. Sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ananaya, thank you. So the ground rules for today are that we'll be receiving questions from the audience. Please do share them. We have note cards over here and pens. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and our guys from the Subaru Telescope are helping out. So we'll pass one around. And please send your questions on up to me, and then I will read them off for the panelists. And to start off, I just want I want to allow our panelists to share some introductory thoughts about how, on TMT issue as a whole, and on how they believe Maunakea and TMT can unite science and culture. Kalepa?
Is this thing on? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, well, I want to help frame the conversation we're about to have about how Maunakea unites science and culture, and quite frankly, I'm an amateur historian, I'm a sailor, I have a lot of small kind local interests that I participate in. And so as a historian, what I thought I would do is begin with the historical relationship that science and astronomy has played with, has interacted with not just Hawaiian culture, but oceanic culture. So I'm going to take a few minutes to read my statement. And this will, I believe this will help set the table for the dialogue we're about to have. So, our history, right? The stars have been a constant companion to oceanic explorers since they left their island homeland in Taiwan 3,000 years ago. Searching for new island homes, they used their location within the tropics to devise a star compass to orientate their canoes while they sailed, and an immense vault of stored memory to document orally the direction in which discoveries lay. Armed with the knowledge of how stars move between eastern and western horizons, they explored with confidence the uncharted waters of Oceania and mentally recorded the many locations of habitable islands throughout the Pacific. It is undeniable that these oceanic explorers were some of the world's best navigators. Their discoveries range from Madagascar in the west and Chile in the east, some 1,700 miles, 220 degrees in longitude, and all this taking place before the magnetic compass was first employed by Chinese navigators. Observational astronomy led oceanic explorers to Hawaii shores, a tradition which continued on through the arrival of Captain James Cook. On January 19, 1779, in Keaka Bay, after receiving permission from the high priest, Cook establishes Hawaii's first observatory in a sweet potato field on the Hikiau-Heiau complex grounds. The event allows him to astronomically locate Hawaii on a map by pinpointing its exact latitude and longitude. The sweet potato field was used another 2 times for observatories between 1779 and 1793. Within this period of history, Kamehameha the Great ascends to power. In his logbook, Captain George Vancouver, returning to Hawaii on his 3rd and final voyage in 1794, again requests to use the same property, but is denied access by the wife of Koa, the former kahuna of Hikiau-Heiau. Kamehameha asked Vancouver to consider using another part of the bay for his observatory, but the sweet potato field is the best location. Kamehameha assembles his priests, and after serious discussion, Vancouver is granted permission by the insistence of the Hikiau-Heiau high priest to once again use the sweet potato field to locate his observatory. All this takes place on the same day that the request is made. Here's Hawaii's first example of a ranking alii and the priestly order vested deeply in the religious traditions, siding with the cause of science and not believing that telescopes are a desecration. For the next 100 years, Hawaiians would be introduced to astronomy and take part in a scientific project to scale the solar system. In 1831, with approval of the government, Lahainaluna Seminary was established, becoming the first school west of the Rockies. The Reverend Lauren Andrews, Lahainaluna's first educator, establishes a curriculum of arithmetic, writing, geography, and natural history. Later, advanced math, scriptural history, theology, and astronomy is added. Yeah. From 1846 through 1874, there were 2 other observatories on Oahu. In 1846, Chester Lyman, a Yale professor, arrives from Connecticut with observational equipment. The equipment eventually exchanges hands with a David Flitner and a Mr. Boardman, both having familiarity with instrumentation as chronometer and watchmakers. They established the Boardman-Flitner Observatory on Union Street in Honolulu. The second observatory is erected by French Naval Lieutenant M. Fleurius, who uses the observatory to determine Honolulu's longitudinal distance from Paris. In 1874, with the permission of King Kalakaua, the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, England, is granted permission to establish 3 stations in Hawaii to observe a very rare transit of Venus for the purpose of determining the astronomical unit. The AU will become the unit of measure for the Earth-Sun distance and will provide an absolute scale for measuring our solar system. The 7-member team is spread across 3 islands, the main station at Apua in Honolulu, and auxiliary stations in Kona on Hawaii Island and Waimea on Kauai. This is the second example of a ranking alii vested in culture and traditions of the islands, siding with science. In 1884, the first permanent telescope is brought to Hawaii, and the dome is constructed on the campus of Punahou at Pauahi Hall. In 1892, W.D. Alexander leads the astronomical and geophysical survey team to Maunakea. They camp on the shores of Lake Waiau for 6 days. For the first time, a meridian telescope is used on Maunakea to fix the accurate latitude and altitude of the mountain. Astronomer E.D. Preston comments that the sky is so clear that the team is able to make its first observations before 5 p.m. There are a number of documented examples of Hawaiians acknowledging the value of science and astronomy. Queen Liliuokalani, in her translated manuscript of the Kumulipu, says, "The ancient Hawaiians were astronomers, and the terms used in the Kumulipu appertain to the heavens, the stars, terrestrial science, and the gods." In the seminal catalog of oceanic and Hawaiian star names, Nainoa Hoku, by Rubelite Johnson, John Mauliola, Clive Ruggles, and Malcolm Chan, the authors assert that the study of the universe may be the means by which their descendants today, who oftentimes seem to have lost their way through adverse circumstances, may recover the sure sense of direction which their ancestors ably set their course. They close with a quote from King Liolio. Navai ho e ke ole o ke akamai, he ala nui I maa I kahele I o mao makua. Who would not be wise on the path so long traveled by my ancestors? And lastly, David Malo, in his book, Hawaiian Antiquities, disclaims a mythological story that the islands were created by Manuakea. He asserts that the islands were created by volcanism. Clearly, the amount of documented evidence describes the Hawaiian people who are changing their perspective through education and knowledge. The value of all the sciences and of astronomy is that it allows us to see the universe in new ways, and I, as a native Hawaiian, support this pursuit of enlightenment and knowledge. Thank you.
Mahalo, Kalepa. Next up, Wally, you want to give some thoughts on this topic?
Aloha mai kako. Kalamai, forgive me if I offend anybody, especially my Ohana Hawaiians. We had a critical time facing the Mauna. So I wanted to basically thank all of the workers who work at all the telescopes up there. Being at the Office of Maunakea Management, it's an honor to work with these individuals who have deep respect for the Hawaiian culture. A lot of them are Hawaiians working on the mountain. Our day crew are Hawaiians and community born and raised on the island. So I want to thank them for all their hard work and for protecting the resources of the Mauna. Our Maunakea Support Services, who keeps the road safe and open for the general public, our rangers, and especially our OMKM staff, which protects the resources on the bugs and the fauna up on the mountain. So basically, I just wanted to thank them for their hard work and moving forward in the future of continuing astronomy. It's not about TMT, it's about astronomy as a whole. Make no mistake, it's not trying to stop TMT, it's about trying to stop astronomy. And our historic work that we have continued to do, as Kalepa was mentioning, and how we move forward. So it's about protecting astronomy as a whole and protecting the resources on this beautiful Maunakea. Okay, so that's my talk and my appreciation today.
Thank you, Wally. Dr. Kaluna?
I think the best way to respond to this topic is to talk about my own experiences and my way of navigating through my PhD program and my choice of research. So of course, being born and raised in Pahoa, low income area, we didn't have a lot of money. So how do we get by? Fishing, right? So Dad, very little, took me out. And that's how I developed my relationship with the ocean, with Puhiki. Some of those places, unfortunately, are no longer the same, but still there. Yeah, so some of the earliest memories I have is spending those mornings by the ocean with my father, getting food to put on our table. And so, when we go to school, when we're kids, we get told to reach for the stars. And they weren't hard on me. My parents were super supportive and super happy, and just happy with anything that I did. And for some reason, I had this drive to go in the route of mathematics and astronomy, and so I went that route. When I get into college, that's the first time that I ever get to go up to the mountain. And why did I go up that mountain? Manuakea, it was because of astronomy. That was the first time that I got to learn that mountain. Because of my interest in understanding our place in the universe and understanding how we can use mathematics, a language that is universal to everybody on this earth, to connect to our greater environment. And so by going through that process of college and understanding how does that relate to my place here in the island, I got my degree, decided that this is what I want to do for a career. I never expected to have these kinds of things taking place today. It was a very different community perspective, I think, regarding astronomy when I was younger. My father was super proud when I got accepted into the astronomy graduate program at Manoa. And that first semester, they're trying to help you, guide you in choosing your area of expertise. And I ended up working with Dr. Karen Meach, who was head of the University of Hawaii NASA Astrobiology Institute. And her topic was, or her talk was on the topic of the origin of water on Earth. And so, of course, as someone who very much values my connection to the water, I thought this was amazing. There's a way for me to carry on my love for the water into the research that I can do in graduate school. And so, of course, that's where I ended up going, and that's what I've chosen to do. And trying to understand that water, we take it for granted that it's here on our Earth, but it's actually relatively rare. If you look at the surface of our Earth, it's covered with it, but it's a relatively rare element compared to the overall mass of our planet. And so the question of where does this water come from is something that drives my research today. And that's why I look at things like asteroids, look at water on the moon, and trying to understand the story of how has water gotten to here on Earth? How did it form here on Earth? How has it led to the origin and development of life on Earth? And so when I think about my own path, which I realize is probably very different from many astronomers, I can't help but think about how there is an intimate relationship between the science, the modern science of astronomy that we see today taking place on Maunakea, and the connection to my culture. Understanding where life came from, our ultimate genealogy, is intimately tied to the question of the origin of water. And so I think that, for me, is how I look at that topic question.
Mahalo. Richard?
I met Heather when she was an undergrad student at Keaka STEM program. I was an advisor. So I was giving a introduction to a talk about the program we were doing at Keaka. And basically we were collecting money to send the students on excursion. And after the presentation, she came up and she said, she was really interested in trying to figure out how to go get money. And I'm looking at her like, wow, you're supposed to be thinking about going to school. She went to Pahoa school, I knew all that, but she's a kind-hearted person, and we're really proud to have her on the whale board, and as well as Kalepa, yeah. So I'll give you some background. My family is Kamahele from Loa Puna. I learned, and I've been a farmer for a long time, 40 years, commercial farmers. And the thing about farming is you got to make sure you make the pluses exceed the minuses. Because if the minuses take over, that's it. You cannot pay the payroll. So the pluses got to exceed the minuses. That's the rule. It's just math, right? So I learned a lot from my family down there in Maku. My pop used to, and I was, about 10 years old when my pop told me some of these stories, and I wanted to share some of them with you, just so you get a sense of where I'm coming from. So I was 10 years old. My pop says, and he was talking about he and his friends were fishing out in Maku. And he said, whitewater coming, what you gonna do? And I know what he was talking about. There's a point there, and Maku is kind of rough at times. And so I said, no, I don't know what. He said, you know what I did? I climbed up my bamboo pole, hand over hand, lifted out my legs, and then when the water passed underneath, I dropped down and I went and got my friends out of the water. I went, wow, it's pretty mean. Then he looked at me and he said, you know what? I knew what I was going to do before it happened. 10-year-old kid, right? Then another time he said, earthquake coming, what you going to do? And this is the kind of earthquake we have here on the Big Island, yeah? The kind of ground goes like that. So again, what you going to do? I don't know. He said, you jump in the air, you do half a turn. I said, how come half a turn? He says, because you jump in the air, you do 2 turns, you see everything. Oh, okay. And then he looked at me and he said, when you're in the air, you're not going to fall down. Okay. I never catch on to that for maybe 40 years later. But, just to give you an idea what my papa's like, yeah? So he would say, find 2 answers for every problem and 1 more just in case. And then he would say, not no can, and he pound the table, the dishes fly in the air, not no can. So that was his attitude. And that's how come I support 30-meter telescope and Keiki education, because I myself was 10 years old. So I have a sense of, how kids pick up stuff, yeah? What I'm going to say has a little bit different twist to it, but it's the same thing. We're all trying to achieve the same goals. So I grew up, Kolohe kid, went to UH, flunked out, immediately got drafted to go to Vietnam, but trying to make the best of it, not no can. I became an officer. To spend 7 years in the military, then came back, and then decided I need to go to school so I decided to major in accounting, just to keep score. So we were farming bananas and tomatoes. We had about, when we were max production, we were producing about 6 million pounds annually of bananas and about 1 million pounds annually of tomatoes. So while we were farming, we noticed the price going up of our supplies in 2007. And we realized it was all due to byproducts of fossil fuel, of oil. So I figured I better go to the mainland and look into this. So when I went there, the first thing I learned was the world had been using twice as much oil as it had been finding, and had been doing that for 20 years. So, coming banana farmer, looking around, holy smokes, that's not good. And then today, same thing's happening, except that we're finding even less and using more. In 2009, that's 10 years more ago, yeah? We're sitting in this panel discussion on the mainland, and one of the guys was a geologist, and what he said was he had studied 4,000 wells in the Barnett Shale in Texas, and the average shale well only lasted about 4 years. 90% of what was going to come out came out in 4 years. And I'm sitting there in the audience thinking, holy smokes, 4 years. That means we got to drill one every 4 years just to stay even. And that's what he said. So that was kind of spooky. And then when I come back to Hawaii, I cannot just go out on the street and tell, hey, you know what, we're going to run out of oil, this is big trouble. You cannot say that. You look like the earth is falling, you look like an idiot. But we already knew that from then. So fast forward to today, we're at a place where there's 10 shale plays. There's only about 3 of them that supply most of the oil that's produced for the U.S., and the same characteristics, 4 years run out, except because of technology now, it's 3 years. So if you knew that the shale oil provided 60% of all the oil that's produced in the U.S., you come to the same conclusion. You know, I was just a banana farmer. It's just common sense. Wow, spooky. So that's where we are today. So I came back, and then the first thing we did was the 30-meter telescope issue came up, and I jumped on it because I knew what we were talking about had to do with jobs, and if it had to do with jobs, now what about, and I'll be straight up with this, you know, Hawaiians, we're all on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder, and then we have all the social ills associated with that. That no can. We got to figure out something, yeah? So now, where we are today is, well, first of all, I was one of the original members of PUEO, founding members of PUEO, and just recently we formed the Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, the Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, and then right after that we formed this group who I generally represent, you know, which is called the Bigala Community Coalition. We're all moving in the same direction, trying to find solutions that'll be better for future generations. It's not about, none of us, it's not about us, it's about future generations. So I just wanted to kind of lay that as a groundwork, yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Timo?
Hello, Mike Kako. I am 63 years old, and for most of my life, the use of the mountain for astronomy and scientific purposes has been viewed by my community as a positive thing. It is only a very, very recent development that there has developed an anti-telescope and anti-science attitude towards activity on the mountain, notwithstanding claims otherwise. It is just as a logical matter, inconsistent to oppose scientific activity and say you're not anti-science. From my point of view as a Native Hawaiian and as a lawyer, I'm only up here because I am tired and exhausted listening to my brothers and sisters say things about the law, about culture, and about science that are just not true, cannot be sustained, not evidence or fact-based. I represent no client here. I represent no organization. I represent myself. So I am fully to blame for everything that I say and everything I do. It is not anybody else's fault, including my wife, who is now with her friend waiting for me. But when I was younger, I lived here in Hilo, on Kilauea Avenue and then Lanikaula Street. And my dad would take us up, and I have 4 sisters and me. I was surrounded. We would go in the winter up to Maunakea, and at that time there was no road to the summit. You could only go so far, actually to the lower part. If you wanted to go higher, you needed a horse. And there was no association that was negative about the use of Maunakea for science. In fact, it hadn't even been thought of. The summit road wasn't even built till 69. But now that it has been built, I got a chance to revisit some place that I had not been since 1965 or 66. My brother Wally took me up to the mountain on Tuesday, and I got a chance to meet men, mostly men. I didn't see any, well, maybe one Wahine, mostly men who work and live on the mountain. And out of the 8 or 9 people I met, 4 were from Keaka. The area of the scientific activity is pristine, and I couldn't help but being struck by the activity on the mountain, the dedication to mission and purpose, the benefits that are derived from those activities, and what I saw down by the road. As a Native Hawaiian, I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed. In my grandfather's time, they would say Kawa when you make like that down at the bottom. Kawa was the lowest class. There was a slave class, and those are the ones you sacrifice at the heiau. It is inconsistent with my culture to be angry, antagonistic, and frankly bullying against an activity that has the potential to address our three main issues. As Hawaiians, the top three issues we have as challenges is health, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, housing, and incarceration. If we stop the telescope, it will not provide any treatment for diabetes, it will not build or repair a single house, it will not help transition a brother from prison into the world. On the other hand, if TMT is able to be developed, that is at a minimum 100 scholarships a year for 10 years. That is 1,000 families whose lives might be lifted. All of our major issues, whether it's health, housing, or prison, are issues of poverty. It is entirely within our control to address issues of poverty. And TMT is the only entity that I know of that is giving this community that kind of support that will change lives and make a difference. I welcome the opportunity to develop a dialogue along these lines. And I celebrate the efforts of everybody right now on this panel who in their various kuleana are moving that ball forward. Mahalo.
Another question I wanted to address at the start is kind of what, and Wally, I think you might have the most knowledge on this, but everybody please weigh in, is how has TMT accommodated the issues that have been raised about the cultural claims, the religious claims? What steps has the 30-meter telescope project specifically taken to address any concerns about cultural or religious aspects?
Well, years and years of community outreach. TMT has gone out above and beyond the call to get the necessary answers required to address the question that was raised by the community. So it's years and years. I started the project in 2003, working for the ILWU, which we still support TMT.
Mahalo for that. Saw the banner. Appreciate it.
That's what it was. Because we see the value of education, we see the value of work opportunity. So that was in 2003, we was on the first committee to select Hawaii over South America. And we sat on that panel trying to investigate the necessary questions required to maintain TMT in Hawaii. So that was from the union perspective. I negotiated every contract along the Kohala coast on the big hotels, Manuakea, Hapuna, Fairmont, Manalani, all the way down to Kona, Keoho. So my mission in life was always to help the underprivileged, the disciplinary action taken against the workers of the hotel industry, the sugar industry. That was my passion, trying to represent those that have faced the need to maintain their jobs. So that was my passion, to work and fight for the working families of Hawaii, bringing dignity and respect to the workplace. And that just translates onto the mountain, trying to protect the resources on the mountain. 100 years of tears that was violated by the state of Hawaii on the Admissions Act to keep the Hawaiians working, to keep the Hawaiians housed, to keep the Hawaiians employed. That was part of the Admissions Act, medical, big issue. That was all of the things that we did for the union, carrying on. We took the fight after the overthrow. It was the ILWU who changed the social dynamics of Hawaii. So when you look at the historic events that ILWU played in the statehood, and where we're at today, and why we keep fighting for better conditions for the working families of Hawaii, that's where we stand. Astronomy is just another facet of economic rehabilitation to our people, for having economics and educational opportunities for our Hawaiian people. So I see the translation from the industry of tourism up to astronomy is a good thing. And if anybody can give me another plan B or C, whatever it is, to provide the benefits that TMT does for the working families of Hawaii, then please share it with me. Nobody came up with an alternative plan that I can jump on, because they're only looking for the betterment of the working families of Hawaii. Without good jobs, without education for our kids, who are we as Hawaiians? The glory of God is the intelligence of man, so the more intelligent we make our children, the more glory to God. Basic, elementary. So that's why I support even plan B if it's better. If anybody can give me one plan B, let's go. I support anything for our people. But it's the failure of the state. We don't need no blue ribbon committee. Just do what is necessary under the Hawaiian Homes Commissions Act. We don't need to keep talking. Let's just show some action. The Hawaiians piss off because there's no action. There's only talk. Talk, talk, talk. It's cheap. Years of talking, 100 years of tears, of broken promises. It's over. That's what I want. So give me one plan B, my cousins out there. I support you. I throw away TMT. But there is no plan B out there that can provide the best benefits for our people. That's why I'm getting upset over this whole delay and the failure of the state to again follow the law. As the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act showed, you got to follow the law. Our people would be 10 steps ahead of what we're facing today. So I can go on and on over this issue. Serving as commissioner for East Hawaii, that was one really disappointing experience for me. I thought you had the authority and the power to make a difference for our people. I was wrong. It's years and years of bureaucracy that is antiquated and not moving our people forward. Simple, no need blue ribbon, follow what is already written in the act, which the state has failed tremendously. TMT is part of the solution. May not be all the answers, but it's part of the solution.
Thank you, Wally. Kimo, I know you've read through the contested case hearing and you know your legal background and your read on the findings, fact, conclusions of law. What did you see that TMT has done to accommodate the religious and cultural claims, and do you think there's more that should be done?
Well, I don't know if I'm the best spokesperson, because Wally was closer to much of this, but in terms of the Hawaii Supreme Court case that ruled that the permit process and the permits that were issued are valid. In other words, you may now develop TMT, went through the case history. 11 years of litigation, contested hearing, 44 days, 71 witnesses. The plan for TMT accommodated every single concern raised by the cultural stakeholders that were part of the process of developing the plan. Am I correct in that, Wally? And so, for example, the site and its vicinity were not used, was in part chosen because it was not used for traditional or customary Native Hawaiian practices conducted elsewhere on the mountain, such as depositing piko, quarrying the rock for the as, or getting water from Waiau. The site is not on the summit, which is generally considered a more sacred place by practitioners. It is rather 500 feet below and cannot even be seen from the summit. It doesn't block the view of the sun as it rises or as it sets. It doesn't interfere with the view of Haleakala. And the plan provides access for anyone of any background to conduct religious or ceremonial practices on the Mauna. So to the extent that we want to focus in on some Hawaiian core values, amongst them is ka'ana. Ka'ana means to share equally. Amongst them is kupono. Kupono is excellence, what's proper, what's right. But it also means honest. It is dishonest to characterize all of the efforts to accommodate cultural practices and say, still, we have not been heard. That was what the past 11 years was about. It is dishonest to say that scientific activity somehow offends Hawaiian sensibility, culture, or religion. It is dishonest to say no and deny a future for the next Heather Kaluna. It's just simply dishonest.
Thank you. I wanted to play off that a little bit to you, especially Heather, given your position in the university. Do you see there's a lot of energy on the protest, and one of the things that concerns me the most is people, the next generation of you, being discouraged. We had a panel before where Makana Silva, Mailani Neal, Tyler Trent were here, the future astronomers, native Hawaiian astronomers coming to Hawaii. Do you get a sense now that students, young people in Hawaii, especially native Hawaiians maybe, are discouraged or dissuaded from joining astronomy as a result of the negative perception created by the protests? Or is that not an issue that you think exists, or is it something we can push back on through discussions such as this?
It's definitely an issue. Some of our students, this is something that happened when the contested case we're hearing. So before I was a professor at the university, dropped out of the program because their families were unhappy with them majoring in astronomy. I have colleagues that have their bachelors from Hilo whose families were super upset about them pursuing a degree in astronomy. And so, yeah, it's definitely an issue. You look at Mailani Neal, you know, her just coming out vocally in support of the project, even while in high school, and getting physical threats from a grown adult because of her perspectives. How could one not see that as a detriment to promoting our students into, honestly, what is a very beautiful career? When we look at the careers and the industries that we have within the state of Hawaii, we are a state that is based on tourism. How many high-tech jobs, how many jobs that really take our keiki and push them to their limits, take their minds and sharpen them in that way, are available within this state? Too few, too few. And then we have astronomy here as an opportunity for us to encourage our keiki to shoot for something more than themselves. And yes, it is a problem. You know, it's a problem not just in that they're getting bullied, not just that they're afraid to speak out in support of a project. I mean, even students that are not Native Hawaiian that are in our program, you know, how do they fit into this story? We're trying to teach them how to become astronomers in a community where astronomy was once valued. And so now they have to figure out how do they fit into this community. And so, you know, it's hard. There's conversations on both sides. There's Hawaiian students that are trying to come through the program, and there's others that are not aware of the sensitivities around the issue. And so even for our Hawaiian students that are just trying to navigate forward, it's a complicated issue.
Kalepa, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, just maybe to sound off of what Kimo had said about your question about TMT's attempt to mitigate cultural impacts. So right, Kimo, the biggest mitigation effort was their selection of actual location for the telescope, right? Someplace that was not obviously used, right? Someplace that affects is basically looking northward, and from a viewplane from the lower communities, it only basically affects a small portion of the island. I do want to note, historically, right, evidentially, right, that there is very little evidence of cultural sites on the summit of Mauna Kea. Talking about the summit, right? There is substantial evidence of use of the Mauna Kea Ads Quarry and Lake Waiau. But in terms of actual presence on the summit area, there's like five recorded archaeological sites, and these are simple. They're not large structures like piles of stones, suspected possible burials, but unconfirmed. Even in the cultural anchor, which is written by Pualani Kanahele, she claims that it is not necessary for humans to be present to worship on the summit area. That the metaphor of the summit is that it is like an elder sibling, and that it is just reassuring to the Hawaiian psyche that the summit is there, that it can exist in its untouched state. So what she's saying is that basically there is no need for humans to be on the summit area. So in terms, again, of TMT's actual mitigation and cultural sites on the mount, in the summit area, there's very little evidence of that.
I'll get into that one. Yeah, Kalepa is right. Over 340 sites, historical sites, over 50 years of age, on UH managed land. Okay. On the astronomy precinct, if you look at that map on the astronomy precinct, where the footprints of all the telescopes, 5 historical sites within that district, 500 acres. Out of the 10,000, 11,000 acres that we look after, 340 sites historic. So you look at the footprint of astronomy, it's minimum impact, and that's why TMT selected the location that they did. Yes, there is lichen, yes, there is fauna, there is bugs, but not vacuum. So it is purposely selected, the location, for that purpose of astronomy. So that numbers are for real. Okay.
Kimo, would you?
I will echo both Kalepa and Wally in particular, whose family is Kealoha Poliahu, who has a direct genealogical link to the mountain. His words speak to me. There are many in the protest world who trace a genealogy to the other mountain. So for them to have Kuleana, they got to turn left instead of right. It's the wrong mountain. But yeah, Wally and Kalepa are really accurate, and they know what of what they speak.
There's been a lot of discussion, and this is one of the questions that we got submitted online about the trash and those issues that have been happening. And fundamentally, the protest site has disbanded to some extent in that the state has opened the road, but a lot of debris has been left behind. And Kimo, you touched on it briefly when you were saying you saw the protest site versus the astronomy site. So I kind of want to look at this from 2 ways. I mean, especially since we're talking about the cultural. So we have some pictures up here of the campsite right now and the trash that we've seen. I mean, for you as Native Hawaiians, as just community members, how does that make you feel? What do you think about this, and especially in relation to the requirements that are imposed on the telescopes by guys like Wally, for example? Kalepa, I think we start with you. You just go down the line.
Well, I mean, Kimo alluded to the word Kawa, which means slave, right? Impoverished, and the fact that it's embarrassing. I'm not going to go. What I'm going to say is that our kupuna always said you had a kuleana to take care of your responsibilities, and all I'm going to say is those the use of the land, there comes with an obligation that you will maintain it, that you will protect it, and you aloha aina it, right? And so I'm just going to let what's being portrayed here be the voice for is actually Aloha Aina being effectively applied. Okay.
Wally, building off the Aloha Aina concept, can you explain a little bit about what the telescopes have to do to maintain their position up there? I mean, what are the restrictions that you enforce against an OMKM? What is there? I mean, because there's always been talk about, you know, the audit reports, there's been leaks, were the leaks inside, there weren't that many leaks, but I see pictures of porta potties falling over the process. So what do the telescopes have to do to maintain their area?
Yeah, working on the summit is one of the most restrictive areas in the state of Hawaii. They are held at a higher standard for operating and working on the summit. So yes, they get inspected every month. They get held by the permits to keep the place as clean as possible. So yes, they are held at a higher standard. And, you know, and that's, talking about the trash, is what we seen at the Dakota on the pipeline picket. As part of the dynamics of having pickets is the trash that is left over. The sisters up in Dakota left trash by the tons up there, which the county had to clean up. So that's part of the dilemma we facing here, but it's part of the remnants of protesting that you will have trash. And to protect Aloha Aina and just, we were trained that you leave the place better than when you went there. So you pick up your trash. That was always taught to us. And, you know, having that kuleana from my uncles and my grandma guys going up Kauhi, up Kukaya Ranch, Paka Ranch, Pu'o'o Ranch, that was all our family's kuleana up there. And you always were taught to leave the area cleaner and better than how you found it. So yeah, kind of disappointing, but that's part of the dynamics of protesting.
Sam, Kalepa is right. You know, from a Hawaiian perspective, if you look at the Bible, it says, know them by their fruits. I see the fruits of scientific activity on the top, and I see the fruits on the bottom. Kalepa's right. It speaks for itself. I use a stronger word than he's willing to, but that's me.
Heather, yes, please.
I think, I mean, aside from looking at what's taking place at the access road, the bigger picture of when you're not at the access road or on the mountain, but when you're down by the ocean, when you're down at your homes, when we're basically going through our daily lives, there is stuff that comes out of that. I mean, we have emissions, right? We're in an age where we're dealing with climate change. There's an invisible rubbish that we produce every day by watching TVs, driving cars. All of us are, you know, participating in that and being aware that we have to work towards, if we really want to preserve the ecosystems on our mountains, near our oceans, all around the island, there's so many actions that we need to take. And the awareness needs to be made that it may not even be visible that there's rubbish on the floor or on the ground. But how do we move forward to protect our environment, to protect our species? I mean, just this past few weeks, I think there's things about the avocado trees, invasive species coming and affecting that, stuff attacking the kukui trees, all these invasive species. You know, we keep ordering these stuffs from Amazon and whatnot. We keep wanting these things to come into the islands, and we're inviting these invasive species. We are part of, all of us are part of this problem. And I think that's where science comes together with that awareness, right? From our cultural standpoint, we need to be observers. We need to take a look at what's actually taking place around us and being mindful of our footprint on the Aina and what we really need to do if we want to aloha the Aina.
I wanted to bring this to you, Richard, also, because you mentioned, you know, climate change and the telescopes, and, you know, I wanted your thoughts on exploring that a little bit about, do you see this as a way to diversify our economy, to reduce the dependence on oil and carbon emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. We just formed the Big Island Community Coalition, and our focus is on two existential threats. One is climate change, the other one is decline in fossil fuels. So what's happening what is really important to us is that we have a scientific basis, scientific look at things. The last thing we want to do is fool ourselves. Yeah, so when you start to look at it from that standpoint, and my background is the pluses got to exceed the minuses because it's not sustainable otherwise. When I look at what the potential is for Maunakea, Pueo was in support of Maunakea because we entered the contested case hearing on the side of the TMT. And Pueo is also in favor of a culture center above the clouds. What that does is it elevates Hawaiian culture to a high level. We can use that as a pipeline from the Hawaiian language school. We can educate people. We can associate Hawaii with science and quality. Because where we're going, you know, with the existential threats I'm talking about, is we're going to start to slow down because we don't have as much energy or dense energy at our command. So we're going to have to learn how to live with less, live better with less. And so the question is, how do you do it? And 30-meter telescope and the Culture Center above the clouds plays a big part of it.
One thing that comes up a lot in discussions about TMT with various stakeholders is the question of, there's a divide to some extent that we've discussed in the Native Hawaiian community. I'm not sure it's as big as maybe it's made out to be, but there is one that exists. Is there a degree to which that can be addressed, and is there modes of addressing this that will allow us all to move forward? I mean, in the end, the protest in some way, I mean, Kimo, you pointed out it's movement politics, so the objective is to win at all costs, and so preventing TMT allows you to win. Who knows what you get after that's over, but you win. So what is the procedure now for moving forward? I mean, Walter Riddy was recently at a testimony. He testified that, the Native Hawaiian community is divided and you're not going to get the Native Hawaiians to agree on anything. To which I responded, I was like, yeah, obviously, that's why we had contested case hearings and all this process, so that's why we solved this problem. But can TMT still, you think, move forward? Is it the right thing to do to move TMT forward if there's a discussion still inside the Native Hawaiian community? And I guess, Kimo, we'll start from you and go backwards this time.
Well, you're always going to have further discussions, but the question is really whether it's meaningful. We have had 11 years of not just regular discussions, but actual litigation over this matter that went up to the Hawaii Supreme Court. So the legal basis for the development of TMT, that question has been settled. Tomorrow, the governor could give the order to move the trucks. That changes it, not from a can we develop question, is how do you secure it so it can be developed safely in the face of public disobedience. Then it is a law enforcement issue. Then it is a political issue. These are issues that right now are being exploited by people who already lost on a legal basis, for people who have lost in terms of the economic basis. The benefits, I sometimes tell my friends that I meet over this issue, I cannot believe we're losing. There is not a single answer a question that you can answer better by building than not. You take away $2 billion of economic activity, there are consequences. If you then create the perception that you're against science, business, education, and jobs, there are consequences. If you say a'ole and have no plan to take a responsibility for those consequences, then you've abdicated your job, your duty, your responsibility to care for the community you claim to represent.
Richard, any thoughts on the question of, do we still build TMT even if there is disagreement in the Native Hawaiian community?
Yeah, absolutely. The consequence is too great not to. Because I was talking about fuel and energy density. The use of oil is directly related to GDP, directly related to getting work done. It's equal to energy. So we really need to figure out how we're going to position ourselves for the future, given the resources that we have. And it's not unlimited. We're just I should say energy blind. Like a 100,000 horsepower jet plane going to the mainland. 100,000 horsepower. We're talking about it in terms of horses, yeah. So if you convert it to humans, it's like 1 million human power. Multiply times so much an hour, multiply times 5. You know how much that flight is worth? It's worth $50 million. There's 500 seats on that plane. Each seat is worth 100,000. Nobody here or anywhere really actually thinks about that. I shouldn't say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that nobody thinks about that. It's easy to not, how should I say, it's not normal, put it that way. and we got to do something about it. There's too much at stake.
Heather? And Heather, I think you've spoken to many people that oppose the project, and so I think your perspective is really valuable too. It's like, where do you, at some point, I think it's clear the protesters, some will have to be arrested. There are some people that will not change their mind, no matter how many panel discussions they watch, and no matter what happens, they will be arrested. So is that still acceptable and continuing moving forward with the project?
From what I understand, they're prepared and they're willing to be arrested to stand for what they believe in. And so that's not, my choice to make. If that's what they want, if they're willing to take that action and they understand the consequences, that they are a person. They have that freedom of choice. As far as getting to the question of whether or not TMT should be built, yeah, this question of what does it mean if TMT goes away? What happens if it doesn't get built? How many of the issues that have been brought up in argument against TMT will be solved? And I think you can see that very little will be solved. When we're looking at questions of where are we going, maybe this is too astronomer separated, but we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about, people are talking about building colonies on Mars by 2050 and having, a whole population of people.
We need a lot of astronomers and math people to do
a lot of, so these are the things I contemplate about, like how do we fit into this new future and this new world that is like really kind of running away with the development in technology and education and trying to get people prepared for these kinds of leaps. And I think if we don't have TMT here, how do we as a community play a role in what's going to take place next in the future? And I think we need to have a say. I think we have very important perspectives and very beautiful traditional values that should be taken with us as we move out into our solar system, right? This idea of malama'aina, we need to carry that with us as we leave, as we, basically move out and start to habitate other areas. And so if we don't play a role in those next steps moving forward, then I really don't know where we stand in the scheme of things.
Thank you. Wally and Kalepa, do you want to speak on that question?
Let Wally go first.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, tough question, because I understand the feelings of our people. The 100 years of tears is real. The pain and suffering is real. Second-class citizen in your own country is real. So I understand the plight, and it's up to astronomy and the political will to recognize that the dilemma we're facing. So yes, it's torn. That's why I keep asking, give me one plan B. If it's not TMT, is not the answer, then give me one plan B that I can support. And nobody has come up with a plan B yet. So until that time, I'm going to ride that horse. They're going to provide the best economics for our people, the best opportunities for our children. So it's a tough time we're living in, but unless we address the 100 years of tears and fix as much as we can the needs of our people, yeah, we're always going to be protesting everything that's happening, no matter where it is, not only on Maunakea, throughout the state. It's a tough road to hoe. In the plantation days, we used to say. It's a tough road, that one. But unless we sit down and continue talking, we can have these panels over and over. I don't see, we're not going to move the needle. We're not going to move the needle. Everything has been said and done and in court and for years now. So we're not going to move the needle by holding more of these discussions. But we have to continue to talk. We have to, in order to address the needs of our people. So yeah, TMT is a different industry. Astronomy is where I'm protecting, not only TMT. But it's a venue that we need to offset the tourism. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wally.
What was the question again?
The question is, yeah, you can say whatever you want, Kalepa. The question is generally the concept of, building TMT still going to be okay if there are people arrested or if there's disagreement in the Native Hawaiian community or in Hawaii?
No, the reason why I ask you what the question is again, because I want to answer the question because I think it's important. Because the issue isn't TMT. The issue is what the state's going to do to allow TMT access, right? TMT, all they're doing is putting up a facility. They got a response where they're either going to build it on the island, they're going to take it to someplace else like the Canary Islands, or they're not going to build it at all. TMT wants to build a telescope here in the Hawaiian Islands because science is based upon evidence, right? And the big investors, Canada, Japan, and well, not China isn't a big investor, but the US, right? They have large telescope facilities on the mountain. So they have scientific evidence that their facilities are producing good evidence. So why would you jeopardize moving the best technology to another location, right? You would just wait it out until the climate changes so that you can have this facility, this best possible facility in the best possible place. Why would you go invest a couple $1 billion in an environment that's second rate? It makes no sense at all. Right? India isn't a big player. They're contributing about 10% of what's needed for the telescope. But India asked the right question. And the right question was, how are you going to protect the telescopes? Not just TMT. How are you going to protect the telescopes? Yeah, while they're being built and after they're being built. Because the threat will always be. The threat will always be there. Yeah? Yeah? Enforcement is not just for allowing access of the construction equipment and the employees up the mountain. Enforcement that's going to be a whole new dynamic. From now on, the telescopes will always be under the threat of occupation. Always. Yeah, that dynamic's not going to change. So the question is not about TMT, but what is the state going to do to allow the TMT to proceed? It's the state's responsibility. Yeah, it's the state's responsibility to allow access. It's not TMT. Yeah, TMT is just a vendor on the mountain. So my position has always been consistent, right? Clear the obstruction on the road, open up access to all users on the mountain. And if the laws are being broken, then there has to be consequences for that. Right now, there has been no consequence for breaking the law. No consequence, right? Nobody's been, outside of the original arrest, nobody's been arrested. And yet they were stopping and they were saying who could go up on the mountain and who couldn't go up on the mountain, right? The state allowed that to take place. They allowed that behavior to take place. So what's the state's role in this? The state, at the very least, They have to inspire the confidence of the public that we believe that our government is acting in our best interest. Are you confident? Are you confident in the state government, in what they've done to protect we're all law-abiding citizens, but there's only a select few people that are being protected, and it's not us. It's not us. So, at the very least, the state's gotta provide confidence that we as citizens have faith in our government, because we give the state government the right to rule us, right? The right to govern us, yeah? In exchange, we say that we will follow your laws, yeah? Yeah, we will follow and respect your laws. Your laws need to be enforced fairly and judiciously. Are the laws being enforced judiciously? Are the laws being enforced fairly? No, no, they're not. So yeah, I basically break it down to the simplest things that I can evaluate. I'm not inspired by the government. I feel the government's failed me, yeah, by not acting responsibly, right? By allowing things to take place without no consequences.
Thank you. So we have a...
Sam, can I follow up on that?
Please, Kimo.
Everyone here is part of that governed that Kalepa just mentioned. You are all constituents. You have a mayor, you have a House representative, you have a senator, and you have a governor that needs to hear your voice and the voice of all your friends. Right now, the reasonable voices in this room and other places is not being heard, primarily because we're not voicing our words. Mai makau, that means do not be afraid. Mai hila hila, do not be embarrassed. It is your job as part of an informed citizenry to reach out to the mayor, to the House of Representatives, to the Senate, and to the governor, and make sure they do not have the opportunity to coolies to be deaf to your point of view. That is your job in this system as well.
We have actually a lot of questions directly on that right now, so I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk. People asking, what can I do? What can I say? One question about, you know, the mindset to use when talking to a protester, in the sense that, you know, coming from a place of trying to convince somebody is not necessarily effective, but was there another way to approach it, another feeling, another place to come from? And also, one thing I want to touch on this topic is, as, you know, as local people, as Native Hawaiians, as people that have grown up here, do you think that non-Native Hawaiian voices are equal in this debate to Native Hawaiian voices?
Probably more important, because there are more of you than there are of us. There is a large majority, many of my friends, who say, that's a Hawaiian issue, I'm not going to get involved. That's for you folks. And that comes from a position of respect. And I appreciate that. Our culture had no respect for 100 years at least. It is only in my generation, and like I said, I'm 63, was there a sense of pride at all of being Hawaiian. My father was the last generation who heard Hawaiian language spoken in everyday life. He did not, because it was not valued. Now that we have people who value us, up at the mountain, the development plan accommodates every legitimate cultural concern. Your voices are necessary, Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian alike. If for no other reason, there are more of you than us, and you're registered to vote.
Heather, please.
We had a series of conversations last semester, me and another professor in our philosophy department, and actually got exactly at that question of how do you have this kind of dialogue? And it was meant to show how to have a dialogue in the purpose of friendship. And one of the things she had said from the get-go is that if you want to have this conversation, if you really want to recognize that friendship, you have to recognize that sometimes you're wrong, that sometimes the things you're saying, right, are not necessarily, you have to accept that maybe the other person has a perspective that is correct, and maybe you have to revise what your own perspective is, and vice versa. You can't come in assuming that you're going to change someone's mind. That is not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is to get to know each other, to understand your ohana, to understand your neighbors, to understand your community. And it really isn't supposed to be about right or wrong, but just understanding that, it's not about winning or losing. It's about our perspectives, and that sometimes these perspectives need to be a little bit better educated. And I think we're in that process of having these conversations and educating ourselves on the realities of what's taking place on Mauna Kea. When we talk about contaminating the water, when we talk about damaging the environment, it's so disheartening to hear that stuff. Because look at the people up here. How many of us would you imagine is just going up there and saying, we don't care. We're just going to throw our rubbish. We're just going to do whatever. No matter. None of us. To say that the people that are working up there knowingly go up there and damage that environment is terrible, right? To take those kind of things, and we need to address them. We need to talk about it. We need to say, hey, this is my cousin, this is my uncle, this is whoever that's working up there. They're not bad people. They're not foreign people. They're not people that we don't know and we don't have a face to put to, They're people just like the rest of us. And they're good people. And I think by having that conversation, without the goal of needing to convince anybody of anything, but just trying to say, who are you as a person? What kind of person are you? Is what you're going to hopefully get away from it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to touch on that? Wally, yeah, go for it.
I know. I'm free. I'm free. The dynamics of talking about all of these issues is critical. And yes, we should be inclusive, not exclusive. It's involving everyone, no matter what your nationality. It's about the world. It's about the universe. You should be on the table discussing this, not just Hawaiians. The state has failed the Hawaiian people for years already. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it more. Let's have these discussions and include whoever is interested in the Hawaiian people, whoever is interested in astronomy. That's the only way we're going to have solutions is if we're on the table talking, not against each other, but with each other. Trying to understand each other's positions. I know my astronomy workers on the mountain are caring people for the environment, for the Hawaiians. I know that. I learned that firsthand, no matter what nationality. So I respect them who work on the mountain, because they respect us as Hawaiians. They care, they truly care for our people, for our island, for the Mauna. OMKM is responsible for the Mauna. We're not there to protect astronomy. We hold them accountable for the mismanaging on the mountain. Whatever they do wrong, we hold them accountable, OMKM, because we protect the Mauna. That's our job. Okay. So let's be inclusive. Let's have everybody sit down, continue the discussions. But the political will to move TMT forward is up to the governor and the mayor right now, not us. We can talk here till we blue. Thousands of letters we sent in to all of the different agencies. Thousands of letters. Zero response. Zero replies. All on kuli, deaf ears. So it's okay. It's part of the process. Because the Lahui has never been stronger. The Lahui has never been stronger. Don't forget that, people. And we real. The Lahui is real. The Hawaiian people is real. The pain is real. It's painful. So let's hold more together. Let's stand together and move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Richard?
From our perspective, I mentioned existential threats. Existential threats is a threat to humanity, to humans' existence. We don't have time to fool around. We got to get this done, and let's all move together to get this existential threat addressed.
Thank you. There's a couple questions that came in about, unless Kalepa, you want to weigh in on this one? There's a couple questions that came in about whether or not the protesters were invited here and about some other topics. I want to address that directly. We did not explicitly reach out on this panel to all the protesters, but we have done that numerous times and never gotten any response at all. So to the extent that protesters eventually want to be on a panel, I'm happy to host it, or if they have an idea, then I'm all for it. They can email imuatmt@gmail.com, and please get in touch with me, and they know how to find me. There's another question where it touches on something that I think that is separated a lot, but it's obviously an issue. And this question is, in what way has the TMT project actually addressed the illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom?
Is that a legal question?
Well, yes, technically. There's a lot of angles there, which I'm not going to speak on. That's why you're up here on the panel.
It's to a great extent the red herring. In my law practice, I deal with people who have sent notices to owners of property, to brokers who are marketing property, claiming some right to the land because the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom was illegal. And they draw some conclusions, legal conclusions as a result. The general argument is, if the overthrow was illegal, then the subsequent successor entity or government is also illegal. If that successor government is illegal, I don't have to follow their laws. I get to either follow the kingdom laws, or more often I make up my own laws, and we call that the law. I'm sorry, Sam, but I can't make sense of nonsense. That is not sustainable. In terms of the legal argument, that issue was addressed in DeLima versus Bidwell, 182 U.S. 1, as a 1901 case that asked a similar question with regards to the state of Texas. Texas was entered into the Union via a congressional resolution. The typical argument of people claiming self-determination is that Hawaii entered into the United States by a concurrent resolution, which is not provided for in the U.S. Constitution. Well, that is not what Bidwell found. Bidwell found that it is, in fact, an effective way to acquire territory for the United States. And then the Hawaii Supreme Court, citing Bidwell, said or held, whatever may be said regarding the unlawfulness of its origins, the state of Hawaii is now the lawful government. And that's 128 Hawaii 479. And that also cited State v. Fergerstrom 106 Hawaii 43.
I mean, my reply to that question would be just to ask another question. Why does TMT have to, what was that question?
So, done to address the illegal occupation.
Yeah, why is TMT responsible for addressing the overthrow of the Hawaiian government? So,
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, if we're going to hold that as some standard for putting up a building, then we better think about that for the rest of the state. I mean, building a house, anything, right? I mean, why TMT alone should be left with trying to deal with that, which is obviously a very complicated legal issue.
No, actually, your answer and Kalepa's is better than mine.
The use of lawyers.
Another question on this, this is directed specifically to you, Heather, and it's, how do you feel about people calling astronomy a colonizing science? And it's an interesting question. I mean, obviously there's terms in there that are loaded that have an emotional response, but I also was curious what everybody's thoughts were about this thing that I've heard, this dichotomy between this Western science versus some other kind of science, as if there's two, but I was curious on, that's the question directly to you.
I can't help but think of Paul Coleman and his thing of...
Tell me a little bit about Paul Coleman too, since not everybody will know.
Paul Coleman was the first Native Hawaiian to receive his PhD and become a professional astronomer. And his perspective was that that it's not that we have been colonized by astronomy, but he said we should, Hawaiians, colonize astronomy the other way around. And basically, yeah, encouraging more of our Native people to be in that position. But yeah, when I hear that term, I mean, it's super, again, just disheartening. Because obviously this is a career that I've worked really hard for. Getting a PhD period is not easy. Getting a PhD where you need to do physics, mathematics, all this stuff that has honestly made myself question whether or not I want to do it in the first place many times. You know, you work super hard to obtain something like that. And the goal isn't to come around and use it to suppress people or to push an agenda of colonization. And to have, you know, any of the people on the mountain to hear that, you know, that is not their mindset, that is not their purpose. And so to me, it's for me, and when I hear that, I think it's just, again, a person blindly attacking and trying to create hurt. And so it's probably coming from their own place of hurt, honestly. But yeah, it makes no sense.
Well, sort of with the colonizing science and the dichotomy, right? So,
Yes.
colonizing, I don't know what that means, but astronomy is the oldest science known to mankind, right? And it goes back to our species emerging out of the trees and to the plains, the grassland plains of East Africa, right? So here we are, these Homo sapiens species, right? And again, Homo sapiens are the only surviving species of all hominid species, right? We're walking out of trees, we're emerging on the grasslands, we're bipedalist, right? We're walking on two legs, we have our large cranium that defines us, and our craniums are attached to our upper torso by this appendage called the neck, right? And then, on the first evening that we as Homo sapiens are aware, right? As the sun sets and the night emerges and the stars come out, we tilt our heads back and we go, wow! Wow! And so that is as old as, that's the oldest science. So I don't know what colonizing science is, but I do know the age of the science. And then, what is the dichotomy question?
I think you actually were touching right on it, which is why do people keep saying there's Western science and then there's indigenous science?
So my manao is pretty unique, right? There is something called Western science, and then there is something that Hawaiians call ike, and they're both different, right? Because Western science follows certain protocols, right, for developing evidence around a hypothesis, right? Hawaiian ike is knowledge that is entwined with religious belief. In Hawaiian society, you couldn't separate the two, right? Western science cannot accommodate religious beliefs. Absolutely cannot. It's against their protocol. Hawaiian ways of thinking incorporates a religious perspective to it. And so I believe that there definitely is a dichotomy between what I would just call science and what I would call ike. They're two different fields of knowing, right? Because one embraces religious belief and one cannot.
I might pick that apart a little bit. I mean, if you look at, many astronomers, there's people that are Christian, Catholic, all different types of religions. If you look at the backgrounds of people who actually are professional astronomers, and even though we have a protocol and we are meant to follow that, we're humans, right? We cannot separate one part of ourselves from the other. I cannot separate my spiritual beliefs from my professional protocol, right? It's somehow embedded. I somehow take those things and they somehow navigate me forward. At the end of the day, how I view the world is not going to be through one lens or another. It's going to be through both.
Richard?
You know how I grew up? I was telling you folks about what my pop told me when I was a small kid. So when I hear this thing about colonizing, it kind of implies that I should feel like a victim. Ain't no way in hell. No way in hell.
Oh, did you want to jump in on that at all?
The law offers no insight on this question.
Wally, any other thoughts on that one?
Oh, I get plenty, but no.
There's a lot of questions that have come in about what's next. What do you guys, I mean, and as community members, as voters, as registered voters, I hope, Chemo, after all that talk, and I hope you're registered to vote, right? You are? Good? Okay. What do you want your government leaders to do next? What do you want TMT to do next? What would your guys' message be out there? I mean, what is the next step you see? And maybe not just what your advice or commentary to the leaders would be, but also, as we've slightly discussed, next steps for people in the audience going forward.
Well, to address the logjam, what has stalled the project, we as the people have to confirm that the governor, the attorney general, the University of Hawaii, and other decision makers, but those are the most obvious ones, are committed to build TMT. That's a yes or no, because TMT got the permit. There is a legal right for them to proceed. Recognizing the following factors. Further negotiation with protesters who refuse to bargain in good faith is not a functional process. The truth is, and I think I've heard echoes of this from Wally and many other people, this is not really about TMT. And I know that because I have had protesters come up to me and say, "Uncle, I apologize. I'm sorry, but I got to keep going because for the first time, someone's listening to me." This is about issues that are social, political, or historic in nature. We have to recognize that the challenges faced by Hawaiians of healthcare, of housing, of incarceration have nothing to do with TMT. So please ask your representatives to decouple the challenges that a people face as a social matter with the right to develop a telescope, a scientific instrument. Next, the state has a responsibility to preserve and keep the peace. It is the government's responsibility to secure the mountain now that the permits have been legally verified. And finally, we need our leaders to understand the consequences of failure. The loss of $2 billion of economic activity, the loss of science-based research, education, jobs, infrastructure, and the creation of a perception that Hawaii is anti-business, anti-science, anti-education. Enough with the modern plantations. We need high-paying, high-tech, STEM-based jobs and careers and professions. And finally, we have another important player, and that is the TMT board. They have, at least some of them perceive, that protesters speak for all Hawaiians, and all Hawaiians are against development of TMT on the mountain. They contend as protesters that they represent Hawaii, and I agree with Wally. Ainoa. That means I can eat freely. What King Liho proclaimed in 1819 when he abolished kapu, and his high priest, the highest kahuna in the kingdom, Heva Heva, led the effort to overturn kapu. Without kapu, all of this so-called protocol, claims of sacredness and so forth, cannot be supported as a Hawaiian matter. If we appreciate and realize each of these elements, we have a chance, because the telescope is you can draw a straight line. From the navigation that my people practiced when Europeans were afraid to leave sight of land. Moving forward on this project in my lifetime is the most important step to now celebrating, preserving, and perpetuating that tradition that began over 1,000 years ago.
Heather?
I don't know how or what is actually going to take place. Again, I think these are questions of what is actually happening next. Those are questions that are for our lawmakers and our governor and our mayor. Regardless of what happens, we need to, as Wally has mentioned, we need to have a plan. How are we going to educate our keiki? How are we going to fill up the gaps in our education opportunities here in the state of Hawaii, which can be very large, depending where you're looking at on this island, right? Some people have way different opportunities for education than others. There's a huge disparity. And we need to understand how, hopefully moving forward, we can address those issues. We can help uplift our people overall, regardless of TMT, right? That is the heart of the issue, is how do we bring our community forward? How do we make the lives of our people better? I don't have the answer to that. I mean, the only thing as an educator I would say is emphasize education and the opportunities that we have for education. With education comes, I mean, they see this, right? Communities flourish when their people are educated. We can see that historically in Hawaii. We can see that historically around the world.
Education. Paul Coleman had an office right across my office. We used to sit down and talk for hours on identifying retirees, identifying who can take their place, educating high school students what path they would have to take to replace that astronomer that will be retiring. He wanted to colonize astronomy. He wanted all Hawaiians on that mountain. That was our plan. That was our plan with Coleman. Recognizing the need that Hawaiians should be recognized on the mountain. They should have on say, they should be part of the whole thing. Aloha ain't a party, political. It's the lack of political will why we're stuck in this rut we're in right now. It's political. Everything is political right now. Aloha ain't a party just formed. It's the attempt for the Hawaiian people to make one difference at having their own Aloha ain't a party. Participating in the fake state of Hawaii on the election process. They lost trust in the system. So now this is an attempt to try and bring that trust back into the system. So having Hawaiians participate in this election process is critical. It's a critical need to build the trust back. So we're in that process now. Aloha ain't a party. We tried years to try to start that thing. Could never get 700 signatures. Thousands of people would sign, but they all don't participate in the fake state election process. Finally, they got that thing passed this time around. So let's see how they mold and use this process to help the kingdom move forward. It's reality, it's moving. But will the Hawaiians take advantage of this process? Because everything is political. Sorry to say, but participation is the key. Inclusiveness, not exclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, do you have a thought on the next step for moving TMT forward?
We just got to go. This is the last time I'm going to say this. I keep on jumping back on energy, yeah? But try to think about this. If it is true that energy is equal to work and work is equal to GDP, and if energy starts slowing down oil, then we're going to go backwards, right? we are going to look back and somebody is going to have to be responsible for turning TMT away. Everybody going to be running for cover. That's how serious this is. We got to get it done.
So, I mean, something needs to occur. Something is going to occur, right? Either TMT is going to move ahead by the state securing access, or nothing's going to get done, right? So me, I'm a sailor, right? I've sailed on voyages for over 40 years. And as a voyager, what we always start off with is evaluating risk, right? Evaluating the risk. And the question you ask is what do you stand to gain by doing something, and what do you stand to lose by doing nothing at all, right? What do you stand to gain by doing something, but what do you stand to lose by doing nothing at all, right? So, everybody's going to be exposed to risk if they decide to enforce the law and move the project ahead. That means the state's going to have to stick its neck out. They're going to have to expose themselves to the risk of somebody getting hurt. But I tell you what, I think the majority of the public will stand behind the state for doing something than them doing nothing at all. Will stand behind the state by them doing something rather than not doing nothing at all, right? And TMT is going to also have to risk, because they're going to have to stick their neck out. They're going to have to trust, when that enforcement action occurs, they're going to have to trust that the state will protect them, will allow them to get the equipment up the mountain, and will protect the workers.
At what means?
What's that?
At what means?
What means? He means, I think he means how will they enforce the law?
Oh, I don't have a solution for that.
Stop.
See,
Wait.
whoa.
No.
You guys was talking for hours, something, several hours. Yeah, you guys say your piece.
No, we never say our piece, because I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. Hold on. I'm not done yet.
Whoa. Uncle.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So,
You walk up and walk. But you talking about
Uncle.
state. When you say state, you say United States military.
oh, I never say United States military. I never say United States military. I never say that.
U.S. military and the police department to stand there with guns on innocent people. That's stopping. Yes, they're going about it in one manner that you may not agree. I agree with you. I agree astronomy has its place. It is beauty, it is loving. You look at the stars, you see the wonder and the beauty of it all. But we look at many things differently. But what I'm asking you is your question. And what means? Because if you're talking about means and you're talking about force, then everything you talk of is irrelevant. You talk of where people come together, of spirituality and your astronomy come together. In Hawaii, yes, we do walk the city. That is why we do not have a separate state of the valley. All right, or the Mormon church. We have our culture. We want to work with you guys. We want you guys to be a part of Hawaii. But do not sit there and say, oh, because no more TMT, our kids are going to be stupid. Our kids are educated. These people here have sent children to University of Hawaii through that astronomy program. Who has graduated, who has gone on to get the graduates at Mauna without TMT, but through University of Hawaii. They have helped these children. They have helped these people. For that, I say thank you, and God bless you for that. But when I say that without this, we all fall apart. We have been standing and fighting for many years. I wish TMT could be a part of it. But at this point in time, it is an uphill battle. And you're facing people that is willing to sleep in a tent in sub-zero temperatures, 80 to 100 plus miles per hour wind. This is testimony to their love.
Mahalo for your
Willingness.
kakuana. Mapopo alal Hawaii.
Astronomy needs this place.
Oh, guys,
Kaikuana.
uncle, please, whoa, please, guys, hold up, guys, please, guys, yeah, all right,
Nothing can stop it.
Security, call the police.
Darwinism says it.
Kaikuana.
uncles, we're almost, hey, guys, we almost done. Guys, we almost done. Can we finish? This is the one reason we're submitting questions by note cards, so we don't have this distraction from the conversation we want to finish up. But you guys know how to get in touch with me. We can put you on panel, we can have discussion, but I want to have it respectfully for everybody's time. We almost done here. We almost finished listening. Kimo, I think you brought up some interesting points. I think the panelists will want to speak to it, and after they speak to it, we'll have some closing thoughts, okay? Is that okay with everybody? Kimo.
I'm Lava. I just asked Kakuana, my brother over here, for a conversation that's civil, that's all. And Kalepa, you wasn't Pao, so.
Yeah, I don't know where I left off, but before I was interrupted, what was I talking about?
We're talking about the next steps.
Yeah, so the next steps is again, I'm only looking at a glass ball, right? I'm only speculating what the possible actions or options for actions can be. I offer a way forward, right? May not be what everybody wants as a way forward, but I do offer a way forward.
So I think we're coming to the point where we want some closing thoughts. So, Kimo?
I'm Lava. I'm done.
Richard?
Yeah, I'm done too.
I did want to touch on, I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is, the point of, I agree. I don't think if TMT, goes away, then everything is lost. But coming from Pahoa School and knowing that, we had, our books was recycled Hilo books that they gave away to us, that we have problems in our education system that need to be remedied. So regardless of TMT, we need to work on that. And, I'm so appreciative, like you said, of the university, because my parents couldn't afford to send us to school. But you know what did help? My dad served in the military, and they helped pay my way through school because of that. And so that I am very much appreciative of our government in being able to make that possible. My father served, he was drafted, he did his time, did not come back the same. And they tried to do their best to help. Probably was not nearly enough, but, I'm here today because of that. And I don't know, I hope that answers your question.
Wally? Any closing thoughts, messages? I mean, anything for our elected officials that are here today, Mayor Kim?
I know, as I free. I can talk and say what I like. But, and again, we're coming back to inclusiveness, and let's talk. Let's keep talking Hawaii. I think that's one answer that, we cannot solve all the social problems facing our island or Moku or the state, but together we can make a big difference if we truly try to understand each other's feelings and pain that we're facing. So, Imua, Holomua, let's go.
Oh, Richard, you wanted to?
Yeah, at the risk of, repeating myself over and over. But, if our economy starts to go down, it's going to keep on going down, 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 down. Now, what's going to happen to the Hawaiian people? We got to figure out a way so that we can elevate everybody. And it's going to take everybody concentrating on that. Right now, we're not talking about what I'm talking about, yeah? It's kind of like a strange subject. But it is an existential threat.
Kalepa?
So I believe that TMT offers not just the community here on Hawaii Island, not just the state, but humanity this rare and special opportunity to explore the furthest reaches of the universe. I believe that. I have always been an advocate for anything astronomical taking place within the astronomy precinct. I believe that's why they established an astronomy precinct, so that astronomy can take place. Yeah. And so I will always be a diehard advocate for promoting astronomy. I believe that astronomy is tied to my ancestral roots. The first people 3,000 years ago who left the safety of the shores and discovered the stars. So thank you very much.
So Imua TMT's mission is to, obviously we want to build TMT, we think it's very important, we think it's very valuable, but we also want to continue having these conversations, these dialogues. As I've said, we've invited protesters to share the stage, and hopefully going forward, we will see more of those opportunities, and we'll hear more about that. I want to thank all the panelists for being here today. I want to thank all of you for being here. Mahalo to everybody watching, and we'll put it up online. Thank you very much, everybody. Aloha.